YouTube, what's up? Back again for another daily fishing video here on Andrew Upshaw Fishing. Made it down to Toledo Bend today. Had to bring a load down. We're going to be doing this quite a bit the next few weeks. And I was sitting here thinking about a really good tip that a lot of people I think tend to overlook, and that's fishing windy banks. So we're going to hit on that a little bit today and the idea behind windy banks and exactly when you should be fishing them. Hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you haven't yet, hit that sub button in the bottom right hand corner. And comment below, what is your favorite windy bank fishing bait? I'd love to hear what it is. Drop it in the comment section right down there. And let's get this video started, guys. I hope y'all enjoy it. All right, guys, we're here on Toledo Bend, and it's definitely where I cut my teeth and one of the places that I really enjoy fishing. But it also helped me learn to fish windy banks. This lake is notoriously a windy lake. It's a really big lake. It's really long. As you can tell, it's a little choppy today. And this is the perfect conditions to fish those windy banks. So often, what I learned on fishing this lake, Sam Rayburn, other lakes like it, especially bigger lakes, is that when that wind picks up, people have a tendency to just go fish the protected areas. And naturally, it's easier to fish those protected areas. But you know what? That's a big mistake, because the deal is those really protected creeks and pockets and stuff have a tendency to get overfished, especially on days when it's really windy. What I've learned is that I can go to high percentage areas. Say it's a point, like this point right here. I can go to this point on a windy day and pick up a spinnerbait and fish it unconventionally. So what I mean by that is, instead of trying to fish like a little brush pile or a stick or a little blade of grass or whatever with a worm or flipping or pitching or cranking, something like that, and actually go straight up to the bank. I mean, literally right up on the bank, throw a spinnerbait, throw a chatterbait, something like that, and get those bites. When it comes to breaking down the exact areas, now that can be somewhat tricky. You want to find something that has at least some type of cover in the water. And what I mean by cover is whether it is a stump, some grass, a rock, a bulkhead. A bulkhead's a great option. I mean, like this bulkhead here. It has a few rocks on it. It's a perfect ambush place for bass, especially on windy sides of the bank. As you can tell today, there's not a boat around. And a lot of times that has to do with it being windy and being hard to control your trolling motor and fish it efficiently. But I mean, when you have days like that, what that wind causes, especially like on a clear body of water, like a Clear Lake or a Lake Mead, a Smith Lake, it's going to create a mud line. And mud lines are absolutely one of the very best things that you can fish. And it creates these mud lines because the amount of water that gets pushed in there. But the other thing that it does is it pushes a lot of bait up in that mud line. So if you on a lake that has a bunch of shad or like big gizzard shad, threadfin, stuff like that, you're going to notice a lot more bait fish activity. You're going to notice a lot of different things. It's going to actually purify the water a little bit better. You're going to have more oxygenated water. If you look at, I always pay attention to tournaments. I don't care what tournament trail it is. But if you look at tournaments, they just finished up the Bass Pro Tour event on Harris Chain. And I was watching some of the live coverage because I watch fishing because I'm a fishing nut. And I'm watching the coverage, and they were talking about in practice it was blowing 20 to 25 miles an hour every single day. And the eventual winner, Defoe, and a lot of guys that did really, really good in the tournament, caught them on the windy side where the wind was blowing all through practice. So two things happened there. One, guys weren't able to really practice over there because it was just so terribly windy. I think when you have 20, 25 mile an hour winds, don't fish that bank because it's going to be so thrashed, like it's literally almost impossible to fish it. You want to fish the stuff that's kind of back in pockets, creeks, and things like that. Harris Chain, you can't really do that. But what that did is it purified a lot more of the water, got a lot more oxygen in the water on that side of the lake. And the big thing to me is, actually there's two big things. One of the big things is it pushed an absolute ton of bait in there. Bluegill, shad, everything. When you have that really, really hard wind like that, it's definitely going to reposition the bait fish. But the other thing is it kept fishermen off of it. I mean, that is a humongous deal when you're starting to talk about pressure and pressured lakes like the Harris Chain, like Toledo Bend, like Sam Rayburn, if you give an area, like a section of the lake that's extremely popular, you give that area a week of no pressure, no fishing pressure at all, hardly at all. I mean, maybe like one boat or so. That area is going to reload. The fish are going to be biting. You know, it's going to be the perfect scenario. So when you get on these lakes, when you pay attention to your wind direction, pay attention to your conditions. Has that lake been pounded with wind for the last few days? You know, and that kind of goes into what I'm talking about here. So when you are choosing your windy banks, to go back to what I was talking about, when you're choosing your windy banks, like I said, don't go out on the main lake if you can avoid it. If you got 4 or 5 foot rollers rolling in, please use your brain. Don't go out there and sit in 4 and 5 footers and try to fish a bank, because you're going to get washed up on the bank. It's a very dangerous situation. So be smart. But in situations where you can go back in a creek, like I'm in Palagacho Creek on Toledo Bend right now, you can go back in these creeks and fish the windy bank. The windy bank might only have 1-2 foot waves on it. And the wind's going to be blowing hard, but it won't have really big waves, so you can control it considerably easier. You can still fish main creek banks, not back in the way back in the pockets. Like I said, you want to stay away from the protected areas if you can. Fish these more main creek banks. Fish high percentage spots, little points, secondary points, cypress trees, docks, like if it's an isolated dock. Fish that, but you can fish it with high percentage baits like spinner baits, chatter baits. Top water, it'd probably be like more of a buzz bait situation, but if there's too much wind, that buzz bait kind of goes out the window. Whopper ploppers, sexy dogs, big top waters, big power baits, and that's how you're going to catch these bass. It's definitely one of my favorite ways to fish. If you look at the Bass Pro Tour, how those guys caught them, I was really pulling for Andy Montgomery. I was hoping he'd get his win there. He caught him on a Thunder Cricket. He caught a few flipping, but I want to say he caught majority of his on a Thunder Cricket. But you look at Ott Defoe, he caught him on his little slim crankbait. Moving baits, guys, square bill crankbaits, things like that. That is what you're going to catch most of these fish on. And like I said, it is the summertime right now. I mean, we're hitting the start of summer. You know, in Toledo Bend, this is the true, this is when they are offshore on ledges. So you wouldn't traditionally think that the shallow water game would play. But to me, the shallow water game's even better now than it's ever been. And a lot of times that has to do with electronics, the amount of people that go out there offshore. It used to not be like that. I mean, it was so funny. Like when I used to fish Toledo all the time, I could go out on some of these offshore places and I'd see the same people all the time. I'd see like Tommy Martin, Matt Subu, Bart Blaylock. I'd see just a handful of Toledo Bend hammers, Glenn Freeman, Ryan Pinkston, Harold Allen. You know, I would see these guys out there, but I wouldn't see vast majority of the other ones. But now you see everybody out there, and it's not because they were watching us or following us. They just learned how to do it. And that's where our game is right now. So guys are starting to learn that offshore stuff, but what that's doing is it's opening up that shallow water game way more, because those fish don't feel like they have to go offshore. So windy banks become even more of a viable option, even on these deep water lakes. I think definitely on these more off condition days, like the cloudy days, the windy days, that shallow bite, especially on Toledo Bend and other lakes like it, is definitely the way to go. Guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a little bit about how to catch them on a windy bank and why they position on these windy banks. If you haven't yet, hit that sub button. Comment below, what is your favorite windy bait bank? I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.